everyone, and thank you for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I will be your host today. I'm glad to see we have a large audience from around the world, and I truly do appreciate you taking out some time today to learn a little bit more about the 6 steps you can take to avoid summer brain drain. You probably have all experienced it. Your child goes to school throughout the school year and makes significant gains, and yet over the summer, there are academic gains lost over the summer months. And if you have a child or a student with ADHD, those academic losses may be even greater. So the teachers always spend a lot of time when they start back to school on reviewing materials from the last year. But if your child is already struggling, that review may not be enough. So again, today we're going to talk about the 6 steps you can take in order to start your Play Attention program, improve executive function, and self-regulation. Now, I do want to mention to you that we are recording this event. So at the end of the webinar, you'll receive an email, and that email will have a link to the recording. So if you have another family member or staff members who would like to review this, they'll be able to do so at that time. Also, there is a Q&A box in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. At any time, if you have questions, please do type your questions in the Q&A box. Just to let you know a little bit about my background. My background is in education. I have a master's in education, and I was a classroom teacher. I started using Play Attention back in 1996 when I was teaching 2nd and 3rd grades. So I've used Play Attention over the past 20 plus years with every age from about 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. So I do hope that my experiences using Play Attention with lots of different individuals will help you get a better understanding of how Play Attention works and how we can use Play Attention over the summer to make that transition into the new school year a successful one. Yes, Margot says you will answer questions during the webinar. I will, so just make certain you type your questions in that Q&A box, and I will address your questions as we proceed through. Let's talk about step 1. We customize your plan because we know that everyone is different. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. There is no one-size-fits-all approach that can address your needs. So we make certain that initially, we take these steps we need to in order to make certain we can customize a program that's going to be right for you, your child, or your clients. We do this in a few different ways. First, we start with the focus assessment. Now, focus is a great norm reference test of attentional control. It's a test that is computer-based, and you can take this in the comfort of your home, or you can do it in your office, wherever you'd like. We'll send you a file. You'll install that focus assessment on your computer, and then allow yourself or your child or your clients to take the focus assessment. This gives us a fantastic starting point to assess those particular needs we just discussed. So we look at different attentional controls. And the great thing about focus is that at the end of the assessment, we will receive the results. And the results give us a really nice report that shows us the different constructs of attention and how your child compares to that of his peers. Okay, we look at different areas such as consistency. Consistency, if we have a student that actually performs low in the area of consistency, then this student would typically have a really hard time starting and completing assignments in a timely manner. So many times we'll talk to the parents and we'll say, you know, your son was lower than the norm in consistency. In home, do you notice that homework that should take 15 minutes is taking 2 or 3 hours? And typically the response is, oh yes, we spend all night on homework. So then we know that we need to put specific cognitive gains in place in their Play Attention program in order to address that ability to start, stay on task until completion. So that 15 minutes of homework will take 15 minutes. We also look at performance. If we have a student that performs low in the area of performance, then typically this individual is seen as a daydreamer. I had a parent I was talking to the other day, and she said, absolutely, he doesn't have a lot of the self-distracting behaviors, like the outward behaviors, the fidgeting and those types of behaviors. He just simply distracts himself in his mind all day long. And so this is our daydreamer. They may get an assignment done, but they tend to leave out important bits of information. So we'll know at that point that we also have to put programs in place in your customized plan to address that. Impulse control. Impulse control is typically a very difficult area. And it's not just the outward behaviors, right? It could also be that if they perform lower than the norm in impulsivity, meaning they have a hard time controlling that inhibitory control, then it may mean that when they are given an assignment, they would rather just rush through things and get it done. They don't stop, think, and then act. They don't process the information before writing down their answer. So you get a lot of careless mistakes in their work. So in impulsivity could be those behavioral issues that some of you are experiencing, but it could also be in their work performance, where you're seeing a lot of careless errors made because they're not processing information before responding. Then distraction. Distraction is an area that we look at, and we look at both visual and auditory distractions. So when you're taking the focus exam, there are both visual and auditory distractions that occur, and we look to see how those types of distractions affect your consistency and your performance. Do those things affect you? And if they do, then of course we're going to incorporate things into your play attention plan in order to teach you how to actually control those distractions. So how to stay focused while filtering out unnecessary stimuli. Okay, Leslie has a few questions. Is this for adults with ADHD as well? Yes, Leslie, it is. We do recommend that the student is at least 5 years old, but you can work on up through adulthood. And focus, this assessment that we're talking about right now, where we really customize your program and look at your particular needs, focus is also appropriate for both children and adults. So Leslie, we will, if you are looking at this for yourself or another adult, we will use focus to assess your particular needs, customize your plan, and then you can start your play attention program as well. Because the whole program, like I said, is customized to your particular need. Leslie says, I think the impulsivity is often from boredom. It could be. It could stem out of your feeling of boredom, and then you just start being impulsive. Absolutely. But we need to teach and develop that ability how to control impulsivity even when that boredom occurs. Okay. And we can do that. Impulse control is one of those areas that is addressed within every single activity within play attention. Now, once we have the focus assessment results, I should mention it takes about 20 minutes to take the focus assessment. Once you or your child or your clients have finished that assessment, we'll receive the results. Then we'll be able to review those results here, and you will set up a time with your personal executive function coach to review those results so that we can further customize the plan. Remember, this is still step one in the process. So once you're speaking with your personal executive function coach, that person will review the focus assessment results with you. We like to make certain that whatever we're seeing in those results reflects what you're seeing in the classroom, at home, or possibly in the workplace. We'll discuss with you different strengths and weaknesses as well, different areas of concern that you may have. We will then determine the appropriate cognitive skill activities to incorporate into that individual's plan. So like I said before, if we have a child or an adult with low consistency, then we're going to put programs, different cognitive activities in the play attention program that will address starting and completing in a timely manner. We'll also discuss with you the behavior shaping plan. How many of you here today, type Y for yes or N for no if not, how many of you would like to work with your child or your students on controlling behaviors like fidgeting or calling out, nail biting, hair twirling, chewing on their shirts, all of those self-distracting behaviors? How many of you would like to work on those areas? Leslie says, yes, but me. Okay, absolutely. Nathaniel says, I used to have these behaviors when I was younger, but now I'm 22 and don't have these. So you can turn that component off. That's how we would customize your plan. But many of you are saying yes, yet you do want to work on controlling those self-distracting behaviors. Angelica, Catherine, absolutely. Okay, so if you are saying yes, you do want to work on these behaviors, we have a full behavior shaping program written within Play Attention. So that component will be part of your customized plan. We'll also talk to you about your training schedule. We do recommend that everyone who's working on Play Attention works at least an hour per week. Now that hour could be broken up. It could be 2 30-minute sessions, or it could be 4 15-minute sessions. Whatever you think works best for that individual. So we'll want to talk to you about that. Now, I know a lot of parents right now want to do more time over the summer. You know, you have a little bit more downtime, so you want to use that time to actually get more of the training done. And then when school starts, you can go back to that hour per week. So it's absolutely fine, especially over the summer months, to do more than an hour per week. The hour is simply a minimum that we recommend. So at that point, when you're discussing this with your executive function coach, you'll talk about your specific training schedule. And it's important that we discuss that with you because we know that consistency is really important in the learning process. So we'll want to make certain that we set up a consistent schedule with you so that you can follow that consistent schedule and get maximum benefit. Then we're going to set up each student profile. So if you are in a school setting or a professional setting or at home working with multiple individuals, we will have a different student profile based on that person's customized plan. Once we set up that personalized profile, then you can let Sheer Genius do the rest. And Sheer Genius is our auto intelligence written within the program. And it's a great feature because it makes certain that a lot of the coaching is done by Sheer Genius. So there is maximum benefit gained because Sheer Genius makes a lot of those decisions for you. Let me show you what a profile would look like. This is an example. We have Nikki Smith here. We put in her first name and her last name. It's a female and a child. You can do child, teen, or adult. That doesn't necessarily change the difficulty of the games. It actually simply changes the look and feel of Play Attention. So if it's a child, they'll have lots of colors and more rounded features and also child avatars. An adult will have adult avatars and less colors. And so it makes the look different depending on the child, teen, or adult option. Then we have some options over here that we'll talk about. We enabled the journal. That means that there will be reflection at the end. I do recommend that you keep the journal on because reflection is a very powerful part of the learning process. The bank is enabled, which means that you have a full rewards program in place, which we do recommend you set up so that you can help with motivation and reaching higher levels of achievement. The stars are enabled, which means that Sheer Genius is going to keep track of benchmarks because all of the activities have a beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill option. And the intermediate and advanced skill options have longer time challenges. We add in task switching, we add in distractors, and there are certain benchmarks you need to reach before moving up to intermediate and then to advanced. So when you enable the stars, there's a 5-star setting. And once you reach 5 stars, which means you met all of the criteria for advancement 5 times in a row, Sheer Genius will move you up to the next level of difficulty. The rating scale is enabled. That means that this individual, Nikki, is going to be working on the behaviors that we taught. And then always create a Sheer Genius session is enabled. That means when Nikki logs in, Sheer Genius is going to select the most appropriate games for that individual based on her previous performance. So just one more way we make certain that you get maximum benefit. This is where we set up what games we want Sheer Genius to draw from for this individual, as well as how many games per session. Because remember, we talked about working at least an hour per week, and that could be 2 30-minute sessions or 4 15-minute sessions. If you're doing a 30-minute session, you might do 5 different activities. If you're doing a 15-minute session, you might only do 3 different activities per session. So here is where we'll set how many activities we want Sheer Genius to provide each session. And then down here is where we actually highlight and select the different activities we want for that individual. And all of this is based on the focus assessment and the initial consultation with your executive function coach. So that's step 1. We make certain that we customize your program to meet your specific strengths and weaknesses. Step 2 is that you will take your one-on-one tutorial. This is also done with your personal executive function coach. Now, I should mention that whether you're a professional working in a professional setting or you're a home client, you're going to all be assigned a personal executive function coach to assist you every step of the way. And that's really important. All of that support is free and unlimited. And so when you are doing your tutorial with your personal executive function coach, that means that this person is going to spend about 90 minutes with you to take you through a practice session, just to make certain that you're real comfortable with everything before you start working on your sessions officially. Because we know that it's not enough to send you great technology and a technical manual. We want you to really feel comfortable about how to coach your child or how to coach your students, how to use all of the different features within Play Attention, how to read the data before you even start working on your sessions officially. We want to make certain that you're real comfortable at that point. Then you'll be able to go ahead and start your Play Attention training. And this is where you start the neurocognitive training plan. So we've customized your plan, you've been trained how to use the system, and now you're ready to start your program. Now, right now, if you have a child or a client in school, we know that the school's plan is typically to teach subject matter, right? They're focused on teaching reading, math, science, history. The difficulty with that is that you've probably noticed that even though the school is focused on teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, and your child is average to well above average in intelligence, she's still struggling. So why is that? Well, because just teaching the subject matter isn't enough. We need to have a better plan, because most of these individuals that we work with, whether they're a child or an adult, are, like I said earlier, average to well above average in intelligence. They know how to read, they know how to write, they know how to do math. So that's not enough of a plan. They know how to do those things. They're very bright. What's lacking are specific cognitive skills. So your customized plan is going to address those specific cognitive skills that lay the foundation to strengthen executive function and self-regulation. This is the point. So that once we develop these areas that right now are weak for them, then they can actually reach their full potential and show what they know. This is what it looks like. This is our body wave brain or attention monitor. All of the activities that you will see on the next slide are brain enabled. meaning that you're going to be able to control all of the movement of the screen characters just with your mind or just with your attention alone. You see this body wave armband here. This is the key. This is our body wave armband. There are 3 sensors on that armband, and those are touching this student's arm. This is one of our students up in Montreal, and those little sensors there are touching his arm. Those sensors are actually monitoring his brain activity that tells us how attentive he is. And then that information is given over to the computer, where he's actually able to control all of the movement of the screen characters just with his attention alone. And he receives constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not he truly is focused and paying attention. Because right now, we know that step is really important, because right now, for him or for your child or your clients, attention's very abstract. You can look at your child and say, I need you to pay attention. But when you look at your child or your clients and you say, I need you to pay attention, what is the typical response you hear back? Go ahead and type it in the Q&A box. I want to see if you're hearing the same thing I was hearing as a classroom teacher. You look at your child and say, I need you to pay attention. What does your child typically say back to you? Type in your responses in that Q&A box. A lot of you are hearing the same thing I was hearing. Absolutely. Angelica, Sheila, Noah, Natalie, Elsa, James, you're all saying, I am paying attention. And really, they absolutely think that they are paying attention. The difficulty is they haven't developed what it takes for them to stay very focused to low stimuli activity for long periods of time. So what we're doing here is we're taking that very abstract idea of attention and we're making it concrete and controllable. So now they actually see their attention in real time. They feel what they're doing and they're allowed to practice those skills. So the next time, Angelica, you look at your child and say, I need you to pay attention, they have an experience to draw upon, right? They've been there. They've seen their attention. They've been able to control it. They know how to do that. And that's where you're going to see that self-regulation and self-monitoring take place. Let me show you what the technology looks like before we go on. This is that interface box. It's quite small. It fits in the palm of my hand. And then here's the key component. This is a high-tech, specially designed body wave armband. On the back, there are 3 sensors. And again, those sensors must touch skin because those sensors are monitoring brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. I'm going to slide that interface box into the armband. I'll plug those sensors in. Then I simply Velcro this up on the back, slide it on your arm, and you're ready to begin. It's just that easy. So as soon as we put that armband on, remember, we're looking at your best ability to pay attention or your child's best ability to pay attention. And all the activities are brain enabled, meaning you're going to control all of the cognitive activities just with attention alone. These are the different activities we select from. Now, remember when I said in step 1, we're customizing your plan. These are the different areas we work on. We work on attention stamina. Attention stamina is that ability to direct and sustain your attention at will, much like being able to pay attention to the teacher in the classroom or the boss in the workplace. How many of you have a child who has a severe attention difficulty but can come home and play Xbox or Minecraft for hours and never move? Type Y for yes if you can relate to that, or N for no if you can't. I used to hear a lot about it with Legos as well. You know, he can come home. I don't think he has an attention problem because he can come home and play with his Legos for hours and hours. We have to draw him out of there. Leslie says yes. Catherine, yes. Angelica, absolutely. Good. James, okay, a lot of you are saying yes. Laura says no, she hasn't experienced that. But the majority of you are saying yes, that's your experience. And that's so confusing, isn't it? Because We hear so much about attention deficit, and that's really a misnomer. There is no one with a complete deficit of attention. What happens is they usually have great attention. It's just diffused over a variety of things, right? Or if they get something, an activity that is high stimuli or of high interest, they can, and Leslie brings up the word here, they can hyper focus. That's right, Leslie. And I'm assuming as an adult, you've experienced this, where you can hyper focus if something's very high stimuli or very high interest, right? It's not that you have a lack. You are wired to pay attention to that type of stimuli. So what's more difficult is when you get into a low stimuli situation. So you're going to notice that all of our graphics are engaging and fun, yet they're very low stimuli, so that you have to learn how to pay attention to that low stimuli at will. And that's the key component. Angelica says that her child hyperfocuses, especially with puzzles. Laura says, however, can hyperfocus on other things. Luckily, they are usually productive things. Oh, good. Excellent. Absolutely. Good. So what we want to do, again, is help them to develop that ability to direct and sustain at will, even when it's low stimuli. So Margot asked a little bit earlier, and I had saved that question until here, what is the feedback you're discussing? Is it visual or auditory? Most of it is visual. However, there are auditory components, but most of it is visual. Let me give you an example. On attention stamina, you can choose from different characters, but one is a whale. And let's say that Laura's son chooses the whale, and he'll see that whale going across the screen. Once he's focused and paying attention, he's able to push that whale down to the bottom of the ocean just with his attention alone. If he gets distracted, and distraction can be a variety of things. It could be that he starts a self-distracting behavior, like fidgeting, or it could be that his mind just starts to wander, right? As when I was talking about earlier, if a student performs low in the area of performance, usually they're that daydreamer. So you won't see the behaviors, but if they're pushing that character down to the bottom of the ocean, but just start to daydream, that character will start to float up because he's no longer as attentive. Then he has to control that behavior, focus back in order to push it back down to the bottom of the ocean. Okay, so you're going to notice that as well. Or maybe someone walks into the room and they can't filter that noise. Immediately, that character will start to float up. So that's the distractors end that we're starting to incorporate, teaching them how to deal with distractors in an environment where it's controlled. And we can teach, not just throwing them into the classroom and saying, pay attention to your assignment with all of those distractions going on around them. We're going to take your play attention session as a time to teach how to filter all of that unnecessary stimuli. So that immediate feedback is key, right? Because now they see their attention in real time. They feel what they're doing, helping to develop that self-regulation. And while they're developing that self-regulation, we're working on key cognitive skills that lay the foundation to strong executive function. The next area we work on is visual tracking. Visual tracking is the ability to stay focused and visually track at the same time. So if your child is one where the teacher says, she does great when I stand right next to her, but as soon as I walk away, she's out the window and out the door, and then she has that diffused attention where she's paying attention to a little bit of everything. So here we're going to work on staying focused and visually tracking that teacher as he or she moves about the classroom. We then work on time on task. Time on task is like what we talked about with the consistency, right? Being able to start, stay on task until completion, closed-end tasking. So I brought this up earlier, but how many of you have a child who has 15 minutes of homework and that 15 minutes takes 2 or 3 hours? Or you're a teacher and the parents come to you and they say, we spend all night, every night on homework. I know this was supposed to take 20 minutes, but we're spending all night. Yeah, Laura, Leslie says that's me. So even as an adult, see, and that's important, Leslie. I'm glad that you're here and you're bringing up points for adults to consider too, because we know that 65% of children with attention difficulties, if those areas are not addressed as a child, then those difficulties are often carried into adulthood. And so just as you're saying, you're experiencing the hyperfocus issue, the behavioral, the impulsivity, the self-distracting behaviors, and that inability to start and complete in a timely manner. So even as an adult, we can customize your plan to make certain you can develop these skills. Short-term memory, the ability to remember dates, names, facts. Discriminatory processing, again, the ability to filter out unnecessary stimuli. And the academic bridge. Academic bridge is really important for transfer and generalization. And I bring this up because, it's great if your child can come in and do a really good job on play attention. But what's more important is that we know that he's going to be able to carry those skills back into the classroom and back at home, right? So if we work on this over the summer months, we want to know that he's then going to start school and he's going to be able to apply attention stamina and time on task and memory issues. He's going to be able to apply all of these skills in school, okay? And so academic bridge is one way that we work on transfer and generalization. A lot of times I'll use academic bridge after time on task. And so we'll have them do time on task first and talk about what were you doing to stay really focused and to finish that in a timely manner. Great. Now read these 3 pages. Do these 5 math problems. Leslie, you can do any work-related activity. And remember, we're going to have that body wave armband on. So as long as that body wave armband is on, remember, we're not monitoring where your eyes are. We're monitoring how attentive you are. So as long as you have that body wave armband on, if you're paying attention to your reading, spelling, math, you're going to hear, good, great. If you get distracted, you'll hear focus. And then you have to focus back in order to get into that same level of attention you need in order to finish that assignment in a timely manner. So one more way we make certain that transfer and generalization will occur. Now, these first 6 activities come standard in the core. And like I mentioned, all of these activities have a beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill option. The remaining 6 are simply options for you. So everyone here receives the first 6 activities. The remaining 6 are options for you. So these are the options that we'll select from when we're customizing your plan. And you can add these on at any time. Auditory processing helps with the ability to follow through with multiple step directions. So if you say, go to your room, put away your sneakers, bring down your jacket, she'll be able to follow through with that instead of getting up to the room and doing something completely opposite or you constantly redirecting. Hand-eye coordination is just as it sounds, helps with handwriting, keyboarding, catching a ball. Motor skills, this helps with mind-body coordination. So if you have a child with more bumps, bruises, accidents than his peers, that motor skills will help develop that mind-body coordination. Social skills, this is one where a lot of times I'll hear, he's so sweet and yet he struggles with friends. And that's usually just because they're missing the social cues. They miss the look, they miss the shake of the head. They're just not paying attention, right? So they respond what seems to be inappropriately or impulsively. So here we're going to work on staying focused on the social cues, and responding appropriately. Spatial memory, this helps with remembering where things are located. And then working memory, this helps with that higher level thinking skill, right? It's being able to take in different bits of information, store that information, manipulate that information in some way, and then give a response, much like a mathematical word problem. So this helps with reasoning, evaluating, and comprehension. So these are all the different cognitive skills that we address. And the reason, I'm going to go back to that, the reason we work on these cognitive skills, and that is to improve executive function. If you have a child who has an attention difficulty or has been diagnosed with ADHD, you'll often hear he has weak executive function, because we know that about 90% of our children with ADHD have also been addressed as having executive function deficit. Now, what is executive function? Executive function is the ability to, or I should say, executive function allows us to organize, to plan, to prioritize, to remain on task, to avoid procrastination in order to get things done. And these are skills that we do use every day. However, they're skills that are typically weakest for people with attention difficulties, meaning your brain may not be wired to fully utilize these functions. The good news is we know through neuroplasticity that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we provide you with the right learning tool and constant and immediate feedback regarding your attention and the right environment, you can develop these skills despite your current wiring. And that's the foundation of Play Attention. Play Attention offers you high technology specifically designed to enhance these skill areas so that we can strengthen executive function and improve self-regulation. Okay, so we started with customizing your plan, and then we had that initial consultation with your tutorial to learn how to use the Play Attention system effectively. Then we started your Play Attention program with all of those cognitive skill activities. And then step 4 is incorporating that behavior shaping plan. So for all of you who said you wanted to work on those behaviors like fidgeting, calling out, nail biting, hair twirling, chewing on their shirts, this component is going to be turned on for you. And you're going to be working on behavior shaping during every single activity within Play Attention. Because the really powerful thing about Play Attention is that it gives them a one-to-one correlation on how certain behaviors affect their attention. So remember when I was talking to Margot about the feedback, and I said, if your child is paying attention and he's able to push that character down to the bottom of the ocean, but he starts a self-distracting behavior like fidgeting, immediately that character is going to start to float up because he's no longer as attentive. So now, right away, it's no longer mom just saying, don't do that, right? There's meaning behind it. He sees how it affects him. And more importantly, sheer genius is going to set mini goals based on behaviors. And over time, he's going to learn that he can control this. And that's where the real behavior shaping takes place. So when this individual right here, this student is playing attention stamina, let's say, immediately after this behavior shaping input appears on the screen right after the game. And this is where there are about 18 real typical self-distracting behaviors. There's an other line. So if there's one that's not there that you need to write in, you can. And this is where you're going to put in how many times he fidgeted or called out or did that nail biting. So we can start tracking those self-distracting behaviors. And, you have a real teachable moment at that time. One of my students that I talk about a lot he was Jay Lawn. He was in my second grade classroom. And I would be teaching math. He'd call out what he did over the weekend, just random things. And when I originally asked him, I said, why do you think it's important you don't call out? And he said, because you tell me not to. So he had no idea how that affected him. But in using the activities and going into Play Attention, he would have that whale at the bottom of the ocean and he'd call out, I like SpaghettiOs, just something random. And immediately that character would start to float up. Then he knew that he was no longer as attentive and he'd have to control it. But then afterwards, I had a real teachable moment. And this is one of the things that your executive function coach is going to teach you, how to have this conversation. What happened to the whale when you started to fidget or you called out? And that's because that's the conversation I would have with him. When you called out, well, it started to float up. So in the classroom, when you call out, what does that mean? I'm not paying attention because that whale started to float up. So what does that mean? I'm not paying attention. So then we set that as a behavioral objective. And then over time, he actually learned that he could control this. And he'd get back to the classroom and he'd call out, but he'd cover his mouth like, you're right, I do that, because he was really unaware of it a lot of times. And more importantly, over time, he learned to control it in the session, and then he was controlling it back in the classroom at home. So that's where you're going to see the real behavior changes take place. Leslie, that will really help them later in life. Absolutely. Now, step 5, we're going to continue. So you've started your play attention neurocognitive training. You've incorporated the cognitive skills and the behavior shaping, and we're going to continue to assess progress and continue to customize the program. Because it's not enough just to customize in the beginning, because there are going to be a lot of changes throughout this process. It is a process. You're going to start to see good results after about a month, month and a half of consistent training. But the research shows that in order to gain permanency, you need to be on the technology on average for about 40 hours, because we want to make certain that if you're working with an 8-year-old, not only will he have these skills now when he's 8, but he'll have them when he's 48. So we have to work to a point of permanency. Or if you're an adult, that you can work to a point of permanency as well, so there won't be any regression of the skills learned. So as we go through this process, you're going to really notice strengths and weaknesses changing, right? So we have to track that progress, which we do through our data tracking. Also, around the 20-hour mark, right at halfway point, you may consider doing another focus assessment so we can further customize the plan and document progress thus far. Also, you have progress reviews that are allowed to you. So the progress reviews will actually allow you to send your data in to your executive function coach right from the software. And your executive function coach will review all of your data and send you an even more detailed report talking to you about progress and objectives and goal setting. So again, one more way that we further assess progress and customize your plan. This is an example of some of the data that's stored. Because remember, when we set up your student profile, that means when your student logs in, we're saving all of that student's data. So we have a lot of data that's stored so that we can see progress over time. We look at attention, duration, ability to deal with distractors. We look at their impulsivity. So we look at impulse control, correct responses compared to incorrect responses. So we store a lot of information. Not only do we store all of that information with individual games and individual benchmarks, but we also can do correlation data. This one, we're looking at all of the games over time, and we're looking at attention compared to duration, because we want to see if they play for longer periods of time, does their attention seem to diminish, or how do they do as things get a little bit longer? So we can do all different types of correlation data as well. Not only do we have the data for you as parent or as clinician, but your student will also get data after each activity. So this is an example. When your student or your child finishes his game for the day, you'll see that here's all the data that's stored. So we can see attention. It looks like this individual played this activity, short-term memory, for 6 minutes and 3 seconds. And of that time, he was paying attention 87% of the time, which is excellent, and got 6 incorrect, and 18 correct responses. And here is the behavior data that's stored. So again, all of that data is immediate, so they get constant feedback about their performance. We also have a component with Sheer Genius called mini goal setting. And so when your child is about to start an activity, it will give a mini goal. And you can see the mini goal here is to maintain 75% attention or higher. And that's based on previous performance. So it's really important that we set mini goals so that there's always deliberate practice going on, that we're not just going through the motions, but there's a higher level of achievement that we're always reaching for. And these are always kept as small, achievable goals. The last step is to make certain you take advantage of everything we offer within Play Attention, because we have many resources that are provided to you. We know that the neurocognitive training program, of course, is key, but we want to supplement that and give you other resources that you can use in your life. Mindfulness training is part of the Play Attention training, and it really is just a natural part of the process. You may have heard that mindfulness techniques really help individuals with ADHD control certain symptoms. But we have to make accommodations, don't we? Because it's not enough just to look at your child with ADHD and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness. Because the definition of mindfulness is the ability to direct your attention only on the present moment, right? And that's the direct opposite of the ADHD mind, right? But that is constantly scattered. So in order to help them develop that mindfulness, you have that visual feedback that's giving them feedback as to when they're being mindful. When you're able, and I'm just going to go back to that example of the whale, right? The attention stamina, because we've been talking about that. When you're able to push that down to the bottom of the ocean, let's say, Leslie, that you push that character down to the bottom of the ocean. That means that your mind is only on the present moment, that you're in the now. But as soon as you start thinking about your grocery list or what you have to get done at work or who you need to call after 5 o'clock today, you start thinking about all of these other things. You're no longer in the present moment. You're constantly scattered. Then you're going to be alerted because that character floats up. Now you get a visual representation of being not in the now, right? Being the direct opposite of mindful. Then you have to control that scattered mind, control that daydreaming, focus back in, and push it back down to the bottom of the ocean. So this is really the beginning steps of developing mindfulness. We have that full behavior shaping program, of course. We also have a family management app, and you're all going to receive a 2-month free trial to Nanny Circle. And Nanny Circle is a great way to keep up with chores, to keep up with the allowance, rewards, consequences, goals, everything you try to keep up in with your family from day to day. So it really gives you an opportunity to practice these skills that you're learning within Play Attention and put them into practical use into the day-to-day. We give you parent and training and support every step of the way. We also know that as you're learning new skills and developing skills, it's important to have a healthy lifestyle to complement that. So every week we provide you with exercise and nutrition guidance through our social media. You will also, of course, be assigned that executive function coach to assist you every step of the way. So remember to take advantage of that free unlimited support because that is a really key part of the program. So let's talk about, I know some of you have said that you have to log out soon. So let's talk about how to get started. Of course, we want to start by customizing your plan. And remember, that's key to success. Because if we want your child or your student to do all of these things that are above the surface, right? We talk about, well, I want him to be a good learner and I want him to be able to read and to be able to remember and to be able to pay attention. If we want all of those things to occur, then we have to address all of those cognitive skills that are below the surface, right? All of these supporting skills have to be addressed. And these are the areas that we address within Play Attention. So in every single activity, remember, you're working on specific cognitive skills that are designed to improve executive function and self-regulation. You're working on behavior shaping. You're working on mindfulness techniques. You're working on all of those areas you need in order to improve your personal ability.